Hello, this is a comparison between the Caran 849 versus the Ecridor versus Varius. As you can see, there are similar designs, but not similar lengths. But I've had several people ask questions about what's the difference between them, and so I just make a video of all three to give the idea of what are the difference between them. First, we have the Caran 849, which has a plastic body, hexagonal facets, comes with an extra fine nib. This is Caran Ecridor, full metal body, and comes with a fine seal nib. And this is the Caran Varius, met wood, which comes with rosewood body, and comes with 18 karat gold medium nib. As you can see by the size, the 849 is the longest, followed by Ecridor, then followed by Varius, even though the price is inversely from left to right. They have similar designs and they have similar markings for where the branding is. The Varius has the older Caran logo, whereas the Ecridor and 849 has the newer Caran logo, which is hexagonal logo. And the Ecridor and 849 are both screw-on snap-out caps, whereas the Varius is a screw-on cap. As you can see, they have similar nib sections and pretty much the same nib length. But the Varius has a longer nib section and has a gold nib. The 849 has a plastic nib section. Basically, the entire pen is made of plastic. Ecridor is fully metal, and Varius also has a metal nib section. As you can see, they're all very sleek and they're all very slim, which can be a problem for most people. And when it comes to just how they are uncapped, as you can see, the Varius is actually longer than the Ecridor and the 849, even though when it's capped, the 849 Ecridor is longer than the Varius. It's because of that nib section, which is very long, and most of it is not usable. I personally use it in a backwave fashion where some of my fingertips are on the facets to give me a firm grip, because the nib section alone is very slim. Whereas the Ecridor is very slim as well. I use the same fashion where I hold by the facets, and same for the 849. So if you have small hands, then the nib section alone might be comfortable. But for people with normal and a bit bigger hands, then it's very uncomfortable to hold by the nib section for all three pens. Now in terms of the filling mechanism, they all are cartridge converters. So it's very easy to maintain and holds good enough ink. And there's basically the same downsides that comes with any cartridge, which is doesn't hold that much ink. But for me, that's not a problem. And I decided to ink all of them up with Caran Organic Brown for uniformity between differences when it comes to writing. Now let's get into the writing sample. First, we'll start with the Varius, which comes with an 18 karat gold medium nib. And this is by far the best nib out of all three, which you would expect at the price point that these come in. The Caran Varius medium nib is very smooth and it's just a joy to write with. The reason I like it a lot is because even though it's a little bit heavier pen, not as heavy as the Ecridor, it's still very balanced, and when you're writing with it, it just makes it so comfortable for me personally. The medium nib, the gold nib, has some softness without the line variation, but it gives you an idea of the smooth feeling with just slight feedback that just makes you know that you're writing on this Tomoe River paper. But if you don't like any feedback, I don't think you can get better nib than this, because this is actually smoother than my Pelican nibs in my opinion. The medium nib, that is. I have never tried a broad Caran Le Mans nib or a Varius nib, so eventually I will try one, and I'm guessing that will be even smoother than this. In terms of reverse writing, this does write reversely, but there's still a bit scratchy, but it's not too bad. And there's no line variation with this pen at all, even though it's a gold nib. In terms of wetness, this is a relatively wet pen. This is not too wet, but it's still on the wet side, if that's what you're concerned about. Now, next we have Caran Ecridor. This is a fine steel nib, but it still writes very nice. And keep this in mind that Varius was a medium nib, a fine nib, so obviously it's not going to be as smooth as the medium nib, but it still writes perfectly. The nib itself is not an issue. It writes good, it's reliable, and it has slight feedback, more feedback than the Varius for obvious reasons, but it has more feedback, but it's still enjoyable to write with. It is more smooth than some gold nibs out there. I know that Caran and Faber-Castell steel nibs are one of the best smooth steel nibs in the market, and I would stand by that to this day. From all the steel nibs I have from Caran, from the Ecridor A49, my 2 Caran Tunas, they're all perfectly out of the box, and they're just perfect steel nibs. In terms of how this pen writes, there's no complaints. You expect feedback, and there is feedback with this. And when it comes to reverse writing, this is a little bit more scratchier than the Varius, but this is also a fine nib. There's no line variation with this either, which is the case with most Caran nibs. I haven't had any Caran nib that has line variation. And this is a relatively medium whiteness. It's not a dry pen by any means either. Now let's get into the A49. A49 is the cheapest of all of them, and this, in terms of how it measures up, it's a nice pen, but obviously you have less quality because it's a plastic pen. But this is a pen that most people use to just throw around their bag and whatnot. It's the extra fine nib, so it's going to be way more feedback than other Caran nibs. And what I found is that even if you get a medium nib, this A49 nibs are way more feedbacky than the Ecridor nibs, even though they're both steel nibs. So keep that in mind. This is not the same quality steel nib as the Ecridor steel nib. This is definitely not as smooth as the other ones. So if you like very smooth steel nibs, then this is not a choice for you. But if you like platinum nibs or sailor nibs, then you might like this nib because it's a hard nib with a lot of feedback. As you can see, this is on the drier side compared to the other two, but this is also extra fine. And reverse writing isn't that great, but it still writes reverse writingly. And there's a line variation, there's no line variation at all. This is a steel nib, and this is a very stiff nib compared to the other two. In terms of wetness, this is on the drier side compared to the other two, but it's also extra fine, so that makes sense. Now, in terms of conclusions, I would suggest you get the Varius if you really like gold nibs and want no feedback, essentially. But out of all the three, it depends on what you want. If you want a cheap throw-around pen, I would go with A49, but you need to like feedback. But if you want a little more high quality steel nib, I would go with Ecridor. If you want a even higher quality gold nib with barely any feedback, then I would go with the Varius. But keep this in mind, the nib section is a problem in all of them, so you have to be comfortable holding it at that nib section or higher up. But other than that, all these pens are solid pens, but they're super expensive as well, with the Varius coming at nearly $1,000, $900 and above. Caran Ecridor coming at $200 and above, whereas A49 is about like $50. So these are all very expensive at their marketplace, so I would recommend doing more research on it if you really like the nib section. Because if you do not like the nib section, it doesn't matter how good the nib is, the experience will be terrible. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.